Hi, I'm Brian E. Denton, author of the book A Year of War and Peace and the poetry collection Inspiration. Welcome to my channel. This video is part of a series I'm doing on Dante's Divine Comedy, wherein I'm reading through the entire Divine Comedy, all three books, the Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso, at a rate of 3 cantos or chapters per week. I've already finished the Inferno section, so be sure to click on that playlist if you want to read the Inferno with me. If you want to read Purgatorio with me, you're in luck. That's what we're doing starting with this video. Now, all this is part of my independent contribution to Baylor University's 100 Days of Dante Project. If you haven't heard of the 100 Days of Dante Project, you really should, so be sure to click through on the link I provide down in the show notes. You're going to love what you find there, I guarantee it. High quality stuff. For any new viewers, I'd like to extend my welcome and say thanks for joining me, and I'd ask you to please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. We're setting the goal of getting up to 250 subscribers by the end of the year. We're at 231 or 232 right now, so it's a totally achievable goal, especially with your help, and I thank you in advance for that. Also, for new viewers, you'll note that these videos follow a certain organization. The organization is this. We start with this introduction, we follow with a synopsis of the canto under discussion, then we move on to a characters and themes section, and then there's the takeaway section where I will offer my own personal thoughts on the canto and how we can use the canto to live better lives ourselves. After that, I wrap things up with a quick outro, and then you go wherever the YouTube algorithm takes you, hopefully to another one of my videos, which you will also like. And with that, let's get right into it then. Purgatorio, Canto 1. We open with Dante the poet invoking the muses, just as he did in Canto 2 of the Inferno. Well, not exactly as he did in Canto 2 of the Inferno, because here in the Purgatorio, he invokes the sacred or the holy muses rather than just the plain muses. More on this later in the characters and themes section. We also learn where we are. We're on a shore, and there's this absolutely refreshing and delightful sunrise color to everything. Beautiful. So already, there's much more color and liveliness than there was in anything south of Limbo in the Inferno. Next, no doubt a shout out to 21st century astrology Twitter, Dante lets us know that Venus is in Pisces, whatever that means. And then he sees an old man, an old reverential man, and a powerful looking man. This man challenges our two poet pilgrims. Who are you two? He asks, and he tells them that no one is supposed to emerge from hell into Purgatorio. So essentially this guy's like the bouncer of Purgatory. Virgil tells Dante to kneel down to this man in reverence, and Dante does. Virgil tells this man, later to be revealed as Cato the Younger, that he, Virgil, is guiding this other man, Dante. Dante, Virgil explains, is actually still alive, though he was nearly dead when Virgil found him in the dark woods. And so, he was asked by this beautiful lady to guide Dante through hell, purgatory, and up to paradise. Virgil continues, telling Cato that Dante's journey is a journey seeking liberty. So you see, Virgil says, no one here is breaking any law, and so for the love of your beloved Marcia, why don't you let us proceed? Moved by the mention of Marcia, who must have been quite the lady, Cato allows their passage into purgatory, but not, he insists, before they cleanse themselves with the waters of the shore. They need to wash the grime of hell off of themselves, and also tie a reed to Dante's waist. And so the two poet pilgrims, they follow Cato's interdiction. They travel down a slope to the sea where Virgil cleans Dante's face and girds his waist with that reed. The reed, it's a miracle, grows right back immediately after Virgil plucks it from the ground. Lovely. In today's canto, we have 3 characters and 1 theme. Now, 2 of these characters we already know quite a bit about because we spent a lot of time with them in the Inferno. These are, of course, Dante the Pilgrim and Virgil, his guide. The new character is Cato the Younger, or Cato of Utica. And the theme that all these characters are involved with in today's canto is the theme of humility. So let's go ahead and take a look at how these characters interact with that theme of humility. Upon first glance, it doesn't look like there's much to add to our understanding of the 2 characters of Virgil and Dante. After all, we spent 34 cantos with them already. Maybe we already know all there is to know about these guys. Upon closer inspection, however, we see some subtle character development going on here. I see this anyway, in the way that Virgil insists that the two of them kneel down in reverence before Cato the Younger. If you recall our two poet pilgrims down in the Inferno, it was never this reverential to any of the characters down there. It was actually not exactly proud, but definitely more assertive. Not so here. So something has changed. And the thing that's changed, and we're going to see more of this as we move forward in the poem, is that the tone here is much different from it was in the Inferno. And this is reflected in our two characters kneeling down to Cato the Younger. The tone of the Purgatorio is going to be more reverential, more religious in a sense. We see this in the invocation of the Muses. In the Inferno, Dante the poet invokes the Muses, but just the Muses. Here in the Purgatorio, he starts things off by invoking the sacred Muses, or the holy Muses, depending on the translation that you have. So again, there's a more religious or reverential tone in this poem. And I'm going to try to reflect this reverential tone in my videos. But, I'm from Queens, so it's going to be difficult for me to do. You're going to have to bear with me. Before we move on to the character of Cato, I'd like to first note, because it's very important, what Virgil says about Dante's presence here. What Virgil says is that Dante is on a journey towards liberty. And again, this is very important, so keep it in mind as you read the Purgatorio and the Paradiso. Dante is on a journey towards liberty. And we've discussed before in the Inferno that in the Christian context, liberty is the self's liberation from the animal instincts that are found in man and towards the freedom of the godly or spiritual realm. So again, liberation from the animal side of human nature. All right, so that brings us to Cato the Younger. Now, if you don't already know who this guy is, I'm going to have to ask you politely, because I'm being more reverential, to pause the video. Go pick up your Cicero, go pick up your Plutarch, and read about Cato the Younger. Okay, done? Good. Let's talk about this guy, Cato. He's one of my favorites from antiquity. I really enjoy reading about this guy. And what emerged from your reading, I'm sure, is this notion of Cato the Younger as the standard bearer of conservatism, right? He's a man who stood against the unbounded passions of Caesar and Pompey and for a politics of restraint and adherence to the traditional Roman republicanism. In fact, from his earliest time in the Senate, Cato aligned with the conservative faction there, and all the attributes that informed his political conservatism are found in today's Canto. So let's take a closer look. First, Dante the poet has Cato the Younger's face bathing in the glory of the 4 stars not seen but by those first on earth. These 4 stars, at least according to the majority of the commentary on this canto, represent the 4 cardinal virtues: prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. So we can say that these 4 virtues informed Cato's conservative critique of the rampages of Caesar and Pompey and their nascent imperialism. In a way, then, it almost makes sense that a pagan, this one in particular, would be found in purgatory, presumably, like all the others in purgatory, on his way to paradise. Super odd, though, that Cato the Younger should be here in Purgatorio, and again, presumably on his way to paradise, where his co-conspirators against Caesar, Brutus and Cassius, well, we know what happened to them in the Inferno. They're getting chewed on for all eternity by Satan. Anyway, so that's our man Cato, the bouncer of Purgatory. Let's talk now about today's theme, humility. Humility, it's everywhere in this canto. We see it right in the beginning, actually, with the invocation of the Muses. In particular, Dante the poet invokes the muse of Calliope, and in so doing, he makes a gesture towards humility because Calliope defeated the daughters of Pierus, who had the presumption to challenge Calliope to a singing match. We also see the theme of humility in the fact that in order to go up the mountain of Purgatory, our 2 poet pilgrims must first descend down to the shore, which is the lowest part of this island. So they're going down to the lowest part. They're essentially humbling themselves. This again is an instance of humility in this canto. They also kneel before Cato, showing humility. And then they cleanse themselves too. And I think that this is also a type of humility because they're on their way to paradise. They're going to meet God. So in order to be humble before God, they clean themselves up and make themselves presentable to God. Finally, there's also this pliant reed that they attach to Dante's waist. So it's pliant, it's humble, but also it's natural. It's a humble type of growth. It's also fitting that humility plays such an important role in this canto. After all, the project of purgatory is to grow pure. And in order to do that, one must humble themselves and accept that they have much to learn and much to purge. 2 quick final notes about purgatory in general. First, the place that we're in now is called antipurgatory. We're not in purgatory proper. We're in purgatory's anteroom. So, take off your coat, take off your shoes. If the host wants you to, you're in the waiting room, essentially. We're going to get to purgatory shortly, though. And finally, it's important to note that purgatory, as Ulysses reported back in hell, remember, is a place on earth. We're in an earthly setting. This is a very important point. Purgatory's lessons, Dante seems to be saying, are for the living, those on earth. Remember that the purpose of purgatory is to purge sin from the penitent sinner's soul. The praxis of this purging is undertaken through the contemplation of vice and virtue, where vice is shed and virtue is embraced. And again, this process is completed in an earthly setting. So while the Inferno is fantastical and beyond human accounting, what we learn in Purgatorio is temporal, and therefore we as readers are able to engage in the very same spiritual formation as the characters that we encounter, if that's what we want to help ourselves to do. So the next time you're in a bookstore and you see that the Purgatorio is not in the self-help section, go ahead and inform the manager of this gross misclassification. I'm going to go a little extra textual in today's takeaway section. Not too much, but just a little bit. I want to talk about the role of humility in any type of political conservatism. I think this is warranted for discussion for at least 3 reasons. First, humility is a major theme of today's canto, as we discussed, and Cato, the major character of this canto, is known for his conservatism. Finally, politics is always relevant in any discussion of Dante's Divine Comedy. As I'm sure you'll recall from our time together discussing the Inferno, there was a lot written about the fights between the Guelphs and the Ghibellines and even the internecine fightings between members of those parties. And we're going to hear a lot more about the Ghibellines and the Guelphs in this poem. So that's why today I want to talk about political conservatism and its relationship to humility. Humility for me is the cornerstone of any conservative philosophy. For what do we mean when we say that we are conservatives? We mean to say that we're interested in conserving our cultural, social, and political institutions. Why? Why do conservatives feel this way? Why do they take this stance? I would submit that they do so out of a profound sense of humility. Conservatives sense that the world is a dangerous place and it's full of folly. It's essentially unknowable, much more complicated than our feeble human minds can ever hope to comprehend. They see that history is replete with oppression, civil violence, misery, poverty, and tyranny. So, when a society's institutions show any efficacy whatsoever at providing stability or prosperity, the conservative, out of humility, seeks to conserve such institutions rather than pridefully introduce innovations into them. For a conservative, humility instructs us that any novelty may also introduce chaos, whereas our tried and true cultural inheritance is more likely, though not assured, to produce stability. This is what Cato was fighting for in his opposition to the imperial innovations that Caesar wanted to introduce. Where the radical is sure about the changes that he wants to introduce, the conservative is skeptical of all that has not yet showed its worth, and she is therefore humble about introducing any of her own thoughts into the system. So those who would tear down institutions rather than strengthen them are not conservative. Those who stir the people's passions rather than assuage them are not conservatives. The conservative seeks the quiet way, the radical, the loud. The conservative then, like Cato, must at all times have humility as the centerpiece of her political project. There is no conservatism without humility. Now, humility makes a man thoroughly submit to the award of legal justice on all points alike, while every other virtue produces this submission on some particular matter. And therefore, After the theological virtues, and after the intellectual virtues which regard reason itself, and after justice, legal justice especially, humility ranks above the rest of the virtues. Alright, that concludes my video for Canto 1 of Dante's Purgatorio. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Remember that we're trying to get up to 250 subscribers by the end of the year. I think we can get there. We're at 232 now, and with your help, we can definitely get there. So thanks in advance for that. And also, if you like this video, please consider looking at the Inferno videos. I'll provide a link to that playlist down in the show notes. More importantly than liking the video or getting subscriptions to the channel is getting a conversation going in the comments section. So let me know what you think of Canto 1 of Dante's Purgatorio. I'm very interested to hear what you have to say because, number one, the Purgatorio is my favorite book of this series. That's not something you're going to hear a lot. Most people prefer the Inferno, I guess. And I'm saying that because, number two, I don't think a lot of people even know that the Purgatorio or Paradiso exist. I think when people think of Dante, they think of the Inferno, and that's it. But the Divine Comedy is 3 parts, the Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. And like I said, the Purgatorio is very, very interesting. It's my favorite. I want to know what you think, so let me know down in the comments below. Aside from that, if you'd like to get in contact with me, you can on Twitter. My handle there is @BrianE.Denton. These videos are going to be released every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday once I get caught back up, which should be this week. So the next video then will be released on Friday. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.